Hello everyone, welcome back to the Snowball Orchard. I'm Snowball and we are going to be talking more murder drones today. This is going to be a little bit more of a talking about a fan theory that I had actually not long before sitting down to record this video. So if you're excited about murder drones theorizing, make sure to hit like and subscribe, turn the post notification bell on so you never miss a murder drones video. But with that out of the way, let's dive in. So I was actually thinking, is the Earth really destroyed? Or was this just a trick that Sin was pulling to maybe try and lure N in? And it got me thinking, what if, even further, N was the target all along? What if Sin went to this planet not only to destroy it, but to try and take control back over N? There's a decent amount of interactions that Sin and N have on Copper 9 throughout episodes 6 and 7. And, well, I sort of am wondering how much of it she was telling the truth and how much of it she was trying to make plausible lies to lure N in to a situation where she could retake control. Because keep in mind, this is also right after Uzi hacks N and V and gives herself admin permissions over them instead of Sin, which is very interesting timing. I'm not 100% sure if Sin would have had a way of knowing about that, but there are some things that are sort of interesting. Very early on, after Sin disguised as Tessa and Jay run into Uzi and V on Copper 9, it's pretty apparent to anyone who would be looking at those two that N and Uzi are somewhat close. Somewhat close. And Uzi is, I'm sure to Sin, an outsider from her original circle. Her original circle is herself, Tessa, N, V, and J. So Uzi's sort of an outsider to her, at least in this line of thinking. There are some things also that sort of feel off about Tessa the entire time, and we later find out that that is because she is Sin. But it also feels like some of the things that she says are almost for effect and almost said to make N and the others lower their guard around her. Like, for instance, when Bo, the little baby drone, is sawing into N, Tessa makes some comment along the lines of, "You're gonna get real red and sad if you try that with me." Because she's a human, and she would have blood instead of oil. Something else that's sort of interesting is Alice and Bo put a magnet on Tessa's helmet. And then there's that one sentinel that sort of freaks out when it bites into Tessa, sees blood, and gets confused over its objective. At face value, this sort of seems like, oh, it wants to eliminate the AI, but also it wants to not hurt humans. But the way it happens is a little almost ominous in hindsight, now that I think about it. And then, of course, there's the scene in the cubicle office thing where Tessa, of course, says, "Do you want to take a look at Earth?" or a gander, however she phrases it, revealing that Earth is completely destroyed. Or is it? Were all of these pictures fabricated, created, edited by Sin to push a false narrative to try and lure N in? to sort of say, hey, no, the humans are still our enemies. They're the ones we should be after, not me. And then, of course, at the start of episode 7, Tessa, N, and Uzi are separated from V. And Uzi is effectively out of commission with the solver powers, as Sin is slowly but surely taking more and more of a controlling hold over Uzi, to the point where if she tries to use her solver powers, it's fairly likely that she's going to end up getting fully corrupted. And Sin/Tessa knows that the crucifix is down here. She knows the patch exists, and she knows that Doll is after it, and probably knows that if Doll gets it, she'll give it to Uzi as well. She knows how dangerous patched solver hosts could be to her plan. But how dangerous could a murder drone, a disassembly drone that is not holding back any longer, who has been primed to be the strongest of the strongest drones? This theory, I know so far, has been a little bit all over the place, but is there a reason that Sin would be so dead set on luring N in? Could it be that N is in fact the most powerful disassembly drone, far stronger than V and J, and he just doesn't know it? It might be a stretch. This whole theory is probably a stretch. But, out of everyone Sin knew at the mansion, N was the one she cared about the most. N to her was her big brother, the one person she could truly confide in. It only makes sense that she would want him out of everyone to be the strongest and to go around the universe, destroying the humans and any trace of them together, with her brother by her side. So it would make a certain amount of sense for N to be a decent amount stronger, at least, than V and J. Because what would happen if one of those two revolted and turned on her? I mean, she could easily disassemble them and make a new one, but what if she would want to be a little more efficient and keep going about what she needed to do and could just shift the responsibility over to someone she could trust? N. There are also, I feel like, some things that sort of point towards N maybe being a little bit stronger than V and J and not even knowing it, and V and J not knowing it either. Because N, it always feels like, is holding back. The thing is, N is not the type of person to, if he does have some sort of secret awesome power, to just wield it around willy-nilly. V and J definitely would. They are, especially V. V is definitely a confident fighter, to put it in one term. But N is just a really nice guy. He doesn't like to fight if he can avoid it, and he probably wouldn't use that level of strength otherwise. So, upon observing how much N cared about Uzi, could Sin have become desperate to rein N back in? Because what if losing someone precious to him, someone he cared about more than anyone or anything else, what if losing that person pushed him to stop holding back and aim that ultimate power at the one responsible for taking that person away from him? Sin. Sin's goal on Copper 9 was not only to wipe out the planet, to finish blowing it up, but also to wipe out Uzi and Doll, the current wielders, the current hosts of the Absolute Solver, because the patch still exists. And if those two got patched, they would pose a very real threat to Sin. I mean, just look at how strong Nori was in her core form. Even with En holding back an excessive amount due to not wanting to hurt Uzi at all, Nori still pushes Sin to the edge in that fight on top of the cathedral. Now imagine how strong Nori would be if she still had her drone form. Imagine how strong Doll would be if she was patched and could use the solver as much as she wanted. Because we see her eye, even though it's destroyed, we can still see the solver symbol on it when she's fighting Tessa in episode 7. And it flickers to a lighter color. Whether or not it's yellow or a lighter orange, it's a little hard to tell because most of her eye is shattered. But still, how strong could she be if she didn't have to hold back and could use it as much as she wanted, without having to worry about Sin taking control of her? How strong would Uzi be if she didn't have to worry? Because we see how strong she is when her powers really start to manifest in episode 4. These drones with the solver are a huge threat. En cares very deeply for one of them. So if Sin takes out that drone, how do you think En is going to handle it? I don't think he would handle that very well. And I sort of do feel like there are things that point towards En being much stronger than he sort of lets on. The hallway sort of massacre scene in episode 1 in the pilot, he is decently strong in that, but I mean, he doesn't really use his photon laser beam cannon thing any other time, I think? Correct me if I'm wrong about that in the comments, but still, V uses it, not as much as she should, but she uses it to cut the elevator cords. And also, J has an EMP cannon. Could En have an EMP cannon and just doesn't use it? Could he have just a sort of infinite arsenal at his disposal of who knows what? We know he has swords. We know he has a rusted saw for some reason. We know he has a missile launcher. We know he's got claws. We know he's got some sort of automatic gun. Not to mention, he is incredibly fast in the air and on the ground. And his physical strength is extraordinary. I don't think V is really holding back too much when she's trying to walk through him in episode 4 and is keeping her at bay with just his hands. And then we see, I mean, he scoops up Uzi at the end of episode 4 and yeets her into the sky, not just into the air. We're talking like, that is probably at least a mile into the air, if not more, with just a toss. It didn't even look like he was trying that hard. So his physical strength, by default, is extraordinary. His speed, we see in episode 7 in the fight when he rushes over to take the pickaxe towards the end of the fight, so that way Uzi wouldn't just be dismantled. That takes extreme speed. He's like a Pokemon. He used extreme speed. With just that alone, he would be a formidable opponent even for a solver host. Even for the solver host. But then the question gets raised, can one even target a disassembly drone with the absolute solver? Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but as far as I'm aware, N, V, and J have never actually been targeted by the solver. By, well, Uzi or Doll. And Sin definitely doesn't target them directly. And also, towards the end of episode 7, when Uzi pushes En out of the cathedral, it's important to note, she doesn't target him with the solver. She targets the keys. She pushes the keys to Jay and Tessa's spaceship into him, and that's what pushes him out. which I think is very interesting. We know that an error message pops up when a solver host tries to use the solver on another solver host. And we also know that Sin created the disassembly drones, so does that mean that they can't be targeted? So does that mean N would be a very huge threat to Sin if he stopped holding back? Real quick, bouncing back to some of my earlier points in this video, the Earth still could very much be blown up. Those images that Tessa pulls up in the office could still very much be real, accurate images. I mean, we do sort of see the flashback down in the mine shaft in episode 7 that Sin shows N of the disassembly drones sort of wiping out the humans on Earth, and there's the huge null in the sky, and there's also when N touches the zombie drones tape in episode 4, that's sort of foreshadowed. So I feel like it's still very likely that the Earth is destroyed, but I'm not 100% convinced on that. I'm 99% convinced on that. But the main point of this video was sort of to discuss my theory about N maybe having a secret strength that we might be seeing in episode 8. I apologize if this video was a little bit rambly all over the place. I love to ramble about my hyperfixations and can sometimes get a little bit confusing with my phrasing, so yeah. But that is all for this video. That is my N is secretly super strong, maybe even stronger than V and J fan theory. Let me know down in the comments what your thoughts are, and I would love to hear any fan theories that you all might have. Thank you all so much for stopping by the Snowball Orchard today. I hope that you had a wonderful time. I know I did. And I will see you all in the next one. Bye!